What would happen if your business was hit with a crisis right now? I'm not talking about some giant scandal or like you see on the evening news. I mean something simple like a negative Google review that goes viral, an employee post that spirals out of control on social media, or a data breach that leaves your customers questioning if they can trust you. Would you know what to do? Or would your team know who's supposed to be speaking for the company? Or would you be left scrambling, reacting in real time, and hoping it just all blows over? Because here's the truth. A crisis isn't a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And in the businesses that survive and even strengthen their reputation, these are the ones who had a plan before they knew they even needed it. Welcome to Rocky Mountain Marketing. I'm your host, Katie Brinkley. Join us as we dive deep with the world's leading digital marketing experts every single Tuesday. It's all about giving you the strategies that are working right now, directly from those who are making an impact. With my 20 years of experience, I'm here to help you navigate the world of digital marketing. Whether you're looking to sharpen your skills or transform your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started on today's journey to success. Welcome back to this week's episode of Rocky Mountain Marketing. I'm excited to be sitting down with today's guest. Today's guest is none other than Mike Swenson. Mike was born in Kansas and raised in Kansas. He worked as a broadcast journalist, just like yours truly, and he later served as press secretary to a Kansas governor. He went on to found and run a PR firm in Kansas City for 32 years. And these days, he's consulting with small and medium-sized businesses, helping them understand the necessity of having a crisis management process in place before a crisis hits. He's also an avid lover of the great state of Colorado. We were just talking a little bit about Winter Park and all the fun things to do here in the Rocky Mountain region. But Mike, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Well, thanks, Katie. I'm always glad to talk to someone from Colorado. I'll be heading that way later this year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we always love welcoming visitors to our great state. I'm definitely biased, but I think it's one of the best places in the world to call home.
No argument here.
And Mike, before we hit record, when we had our pre-interview call, you talked about crisis management. And a lot of the things that we talked about, I was like, man, those are things I've never thought about as a business owner. Now, did I have to deal with them back when I worked in corporate? Actually, yeah, I was writing, those releases, like whenever things went wrong, or, I remember doing all that, but I haven't really thought about it as a small business owner. And I wanted to bring you on the show today because I think that a lot of our discussion hopefully will be that light bulb moment of, man, you know what? I do need to get all my ducks in a row before anything happens, because like you said, something will happen eventually. Let's start there. So a lot of people hear the word crisis management, and immediately think about those big Fortune 500 companies with multi-million-dollar problems. The truth is, most businesses are the most vulnerable when a crisis happens, right? Let's start with why should we have a crisis plan in place? Why is that so important for us small businesses, just as it is for those large Fortune 500 companies?
Well, Katie, the mission of your podcast is to talk to people about their marketing and how they put themselves out there. And what I'm here to say is that part of your marketing should include a crisis plan, because all the investment and effort you make to promote your business in a positive way is going to be put to the test if a crisis hits. And let's talk about a couple things. So all that money you're investing, your time you're investing to promote your business is creating what I like to always think about as a savings account. So we all are building those up, and there are ebbs and flows. We use it up sometimes, but during a crisis, you're definitely going to use it up. And if you have no plan in place, you're going to use it up fast, because all that credibility that you build up, if you're not managing a crisis, or even just perceived as not managing a crisis well, can hurt you with your customers, with your prospects, with your employees. So having a simple plan in place that lets you know that when you put your head on the pillow at night, that if you wake up in the morning and there's a crisis happening to your organization, you've got a team in place that's already working on it. You have identified the steps you need to take ahead of time. So the first 4 or 5 steps are scripted out regardless of the crisis. There's certain things we have to do, and a lot of that has to do with communicating to key audiences. But what are those steps? Let's get those written down and know what and who's going to do all those. And we've got, for every risk that can occur to us, which are dozens and dozens of things that can go wrong, we've got messages already created to go with each of those risks. So now we don't have to get in a room and spend an hour deciding what to say. It's like we've got 3 to 5 key messages. This just happened. Take those 3 to 5 key messages, put them into 2 paragraphs, get them out the door, whether it be an email, on your social platforms, on your website, or a phone call to your top customers to let them
Yeah.
know that everything's under control. So, and those are the simple steps you need, and anybody can do it. We created a process at the PR firm I started to run with a client in the early 90s who was a fast growing fast food brand that was in about 15 states at the time. Now they're across the nation. And their head of PR, she came to me and she said, I'm really worried. We're growing so fast, and I'm just not, I don't think we're in a good spot in terms of dealing with the crisis. Because when you're talking about the food business and in fast food, you've got a lot of young people working there, and a young person doesn't have to be young. One person can make a mistake at one of those restaurants and could cause a brand crisis nationwide, and that's all it takes. So especially today. So we sat down in a room. Her team and our team sat in a room. We created this process, which we then started using with other clients as well, and not just companies, but nonprofits, educational institutions of all sizes, small, medium, and large. We used Crisis. It's called Crisis Track, and at crisistrack.com, people can find out how easy it is to put that in place for themselves. But it's critical, and to me, that's why I like it that I'm sitting on a podcast that talks about marketing, because to me, that's part of marketing. And if you're starting, one more point, if you're starting a company, so there's somebody out there listening today, watching us talk about this, and they're getting ready to launch their company, I would have them go back to your business plan. Do you have a crisis plank in place in your business plan? Because I guarantee you, your investors are going to be incredibly impressed if you walk in with your business plan and you say, I know, by the way, we know things are going to go wrong, but here's how we're going to handle them. I've got these 5 steps in place, and we'll be ready to go. I guarantee you the investor's going to feel a lot better, and they'll sleep better at night, not just the founder of the company.
And I love that you brought up all it takes is one instance, to really damage your reputation. And that's what I think a lot of small business owners probably are overlooking, because, oh, well, I'm a small business. No one's going to see it. No one will see this single post on social media or this one person's bad experience. But honestly, that stuff can spread faster than you'd ever imagine, right? And if you're not prepared, you're already playing defense and having to, clean up the paint and the carpet, which is a lot harder to do than if you just would have laid down, the drop cloth. So when you say crisis management process, that can sound really overwhelming, but it really doesn't need to be a 100-page binder full of information that just gathers stuff on a shelf, right? For small or medium-sized businesses, what does that simple, effective process look like?
There's 5 steps in Crisis Track. Number 1, and they're all important, but this one is the most important, is you got to have a crisis team. So if you have a small company of 5 or 10 people, you may have 2 or 3 people be the team. If it's a 50-person company, you have 6 to 8 people might be on the team. But here's the point: is you have a marketing team, you've got an HR team, you've got a social media team, maybe you've got teams for every other aspect of your business. Put a crisis team in place. Designate those people and say, this is now part of your responsibility. And then it becomes part of the hiring process. We need to hire somebody that can do this, but also we're looking for somebody to be a part of our crisis team to cover this area. So put a team together when the crisis occurs. You don't need to sit down and think who's going to handle it. We know who's going to handle it. So you get a team in place. The next step that team does in concert with the leader of the organization, and it's important, the leader is not the leader of the crisis team, by the way, just as they would not appoint themselves to lead every part of their company. If they're even a 10-person company, they will appoint somebody to be the leader of the crisis team. Get that team in a room, and they need to come in and think of every possible risk that can occur to this company, okay, this organization. And whenever we did this, Katie, with an organization, it was an eye-opening experience, because if you and I are on that team, you'd come in with your list, I'd come in with my list. Some of them would overlap, but I'd have some you didn't have, you'd have some that I didn't have, and we both look at each other and go, oh, wow, I never even thought about that. So now we've got the room ringed with paper, and I like to do it the old-fashioned way, not on the screen, but I mean the big Post-it notes all around the room, because now it's like, okay, we're in. We now understand that there are 100 things that could go wrong, and we just came up with them in the last hour. Great, we got that. Third step is let's go through a process. Certainly, everybody's had something bad happen they had to deal with. try to go back and map that out. What was the first step that was taken all the way through to the end of the crisis, and kind of get a sense of here's how we've been handling things. Okay, now let's set that aside and let's decide now, what are we going to do? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Every crisis is going to be different, but every crisis has certain things that need to happen regardless of the incident itself. So now we have at least the first X number of steps ready to go. Fourth step is we go back to our list of risks and we create 3 to 5 key messages for each risk. Now, we wouldn't have the team do that when we did it. We'd have the team do 3 or 4, because I always like everybody to kind of understand there's more to this than just putting words on paper. There's strategy involved in what you're saying, not just saying stuff, but why are we saying these things? And now we've got key messages for all those risks. Fifth and final step, who's going to be the ongoing spokesperson? Who's somebody that's going to step up and be able to deliver the messages to all the key audiences, media, traditional media, online media, etc. And that's what you need. A team, understand what can go wrong, get your first few steps mapped out so you know what to do first, have messages ready to go, and have somebody deliver those messages. And that's what Crisis Track is.
It's such a good point, because it's not about complexity. It's about clarity, knowing who speaks, what do they say, where does it get communicated. I mean, all that alone can prevent a bad situation from becoming catastrophic, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is. And to your point, it's all about the communication during a crisis. And again, that's why I like to remind people that this is no different than your ongoing marketing activities, where you're getting messages out there to your key audiences. Now you're in a crisis. And if you have nothing planned, I guarantee you're going to be spinning your wheels for a couple of hours, because we probably don't even know who's going to handle it. Okay. So we spend some time doing that. Then we hadn't even thought about that this could happen to us. Well, it did. We don't know what to do first, second, third, and we have nothing to say. And we don't know who's going to say it. That's not a good place to start.
Well, in what we've seen over the past few months, especially starting with, the whole Coldplay concert with the Astronomer CEO and HRO and I think HPO. But yeah. I mean, the two of them, everyone knows who I'm talking about. And then most recently, we had the woman from the Philadelphia, or I guess she was at a Marlins game, but the Philadelphia Phillies fan that stole the home run ball. We're seeing it even where personal brands are becoming attacked and, victimized on social media. And this is, no matter where you go, you have to have something in place, because one, be a good human being. Both cases that I just talked about were people doing things that they shouldn't have been doing, but your business needs to have a backup plan. I don't know if that Philadelphia, I don't know what her real name is, but everyone probably knows her as the Phillies Karen, that stole the home run ball, and then the Astronomer CEO. Those weren't major, I found a fingernail in my chili when I went to the fast food restaurant. That was them out in public, and it ended up hurting their businesses, right? And same with the CEO at the tennis match, even, that took the hat from the little boy.
Well, and it's an incredibly good reminder, and it seems that we still are learning that cameras are now everywhere. We all have one. So we're liable to be caught doing something, hopefully something good occasionally, as opposed to always something bad. But who had ever heard of Astronomer until the Coldplay concert? Didn't even know what that company was. It's not the way you want to, be discovered. But again, to your point, that might not have been on the list of risks. The CEO and the head of HR might be at a Coldplay concert and get caught on camera canoodling. I mean, that probably wouldn't have been on the list, which then makes it even worse, because now we don't know what to do. And, I think they did scramble around for a while. The company did, because first of all, you had your CEO involved in it, so he couldn't be involved in handling it. And the board had to step in. And so if you've got a company with a board, a larger company, or even small companies have advisory boards. If you got a company with a board, they're going to feel better about it if you can explain to them, we've got a crisis plan in place and you need to understand what it is, because here's how you might have to be involved in it. Again, I always like to use the analogy of insurance. When we buy houses and cars, we have to have insurance, right? And there's a lot of other things, though, that we buy that it's our choice whether we insure them or not. And so I feel like that's where crisis planning goes in the bucket of nothing's happened, or when it did happen, we were okay. We handled it okay. We had a couple of rough patches, but why do I want to invest money now when everything's going so well? Why do I want to invest a little money to make sure that when something does go bad, we keep that savings account from being depleted? And there's big examples over the years, and there are bigger companies, obviously, but the Tylenol example from the 90s, which actually got some recent airing because of, I think, a Netflix documentary. But, they made a huge business decision when they had not determined who was tampering with their product or what was happening. They pulled it all off the shelf. Think about that. There's the incredible visuals in grocery stores and drugstores and convenience stores across the country with the empty section of the shelf where the Tylenol was. That's a huge business decision. They did that once they found out what had been going on and they could prove it and it was taken care of, back on the shelf. And Tylenol's with us today, and I think very successful, obviously. But
Well,
I mean, that's an example of sometimes you have to make a hard decision in a crisis that short term is going to cause pain, but long term, everybody recognizes that's a heck of a move they just made. And that means that they stand by their product, their services, and they weren't going to have something bad go out until they could be convinced that everything was fine.
Well, and that's where, communication is so important. And, we saw it from the astronomer, CEO or the astronomer company. They went ahead and hired Gwyneth Paltrow. Great PR move, by the way. But I mean, like, having communication in place is essential. And I think that saying something is better than nothing at all, right? Because I feel like if you don't say anything, then that's just breeding speculation.
Yeah, we used to have a saying about no comment. First of all, you never say no comment. But we would say in media training, we would say, if you have a question you can't answer, and you may not be able to answer it for legal reasons or whatever, or you don't know the answer yet, it's okay to say, I don't know the answer, but it's also okay to put out a statement. And I always called it the 3-sentence no comment. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can put some words together that don't say anything, but at least you're quoted. And you're
We
not quoted
learned
as
that
saying
from
no
Bill
comment.
Belichick after
Well,
years of being a New
yeah,
England Patriots
exactly.
coach. Those
Exactly. I
press
mean, no
conferences were so boring.
they were tedious. But yeah, for better or for worse, no comment means you're guilty. And it doesn't necessarily mean you are, but that is what we've come to expect it to mean when we hear someone say so and so could not be reached for comment, which to me that's more atrocious. Could not be reached in this day and age. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can be reached 5 ways. So let's don't say that. Don't hide behind that guy anymore. Have something to say. It's just so important to be as transparent as possible. And I, there's people who will argue that, well, too much transparency is not a good thing. I've never, as a communicator, had a problem when we've been working in a situation where lawyers were involved in terms of communication issues. I never had a problem saying, no, I understand we can't say that yet. I get that. So let's go right up to the edge of what we can say, what we know to be true, and what we can say. And what beyond that, we don't have all the answers yet. So we're not going to go beyond that. I was always able to, I think, the attorneys I worked with appreciated that I wasn't, because there are communicators who say, no, you got to say everything. No, that's not right either, and especially in a crisis, it's incredibly important to only say what you know to be 100% true.
So let's make this actionable for the listeners today. So for the entrepreneur that's listening right now, who's like, oh, yeah, you guys bring up a good point. I don't have a crisis plan. What should they do first?
Well, selfishly, I tell them to go to crisistrack.com, which is crisis track is spelled TRAK.com. And that's where I have 9 videos produced that go into great detail of how to put this plan in place. And you can do it yourself. Organizations can do it themselves. If they needed help, if they bought in and they watched the 9 videos, they're starting to put the pieces in place, they run into an issue, they can reach out to me. My LinkedIn profile is the other place to go. I have a lot of content there that's open for anyone to look at their leisure, a ton of it now. So there's all kinds of case studies on there. And there's just things that would at least give people content to take in and think about and say, oh, God, yeah, that could happen to us. And some approaches and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff there. Those 2 things. The first step is to decide you need to do something. And the first step is who's going to manage that crisis for you in your organization. It's the entrepreneur, and he or she hadn't made any hires yet, then I guess we know who's going to handle it. But the moment they've got 3 or 4 or 5 employees, one of those employees' tasks should now be to be the crisis team leader. And that's the first step, is to at least say, this is now important enough that we need to have a team, just like we have a team for everything else. We have a team for crisis, and then get into the next 4 steps.
Yeah. And I mean, just add, like, you update your financials every year. You update your marketing strategy every year. Revisit your crisis plan at least once a year. New risks are always popping up. AI, cybersecurity. If you are a local restaurant or anything, supply chain issues, there's always something. So review it yearly at least, right?
Yeah, at least we would, for those organizations that hired us to do the crisis track process for them, what happened then is that we would ask that crisis team to meet every quarter. Sometimes they wanted to meet just twice a year, but we would insist on every quarter, because to do just what you said is, first of all, do we have any crises the last 3 months, and how do we do? And what did we learn? And do we need to tweak our process a little bit, or we need to tweak a message here that didn't quite come out right, or we got into some trouble with it or whatever? Make those tweaks. Second, and you just said it, is anything new come up that we hadn't thought of before? And I can tell you after 9/11 that there were so many things that came up that companies had not thought about, that we were back with a few companies that we had crisis track in place with, that we were back in doing kind of a retool of things that, now there's some new things on the horizon you got to deal with. And that happens all the time. And then once a year, we would ask them to do a tabletop drill, which was, we would put a script together, take 2 hours and put a script together of a crisis happening, and then throw in different things happening, and watch how, and again, it's just everybody sitting around a table, see how everybody reacts and what they do. And kind of at least puts you through the paces of actually, for a couple hours, thinking through how this actually looks and works and feels.
Like, you're in Kansas. I'm from Colorado. We grew up doing the tornado drills. Never had a tornado come through, but if one never did, I know to go and hide underneath the desk. Just practice to know you just need to have that plan in place, and hopefully you never have to use it, right?
Right. And the beauty of having that plan in place is just the security of knowing that when something happens, it's the first couple hours are going to be under control, which usually they aren't. And the first 24 hours of a crisis are critical. And it might be, in this day and age, the first 12, it might be getting shorter in terms of what we have to do. But it's just knowing that, and you said it a minute ago, I mean, you've got your marketing plan in place, you got your business plan in place. And as part of that business plan, there should be a section called crisis management.
I 100% agree. Well, Mike, this has been such an awesome conversation. And to our listeners, again, here's the takeaway I want you to leave today's episode with. Don't wait for a crisis to happen. Build your plan now. Keep it simple. Revisit it regularly. And remember, your communication is the difference between a temporary setback or long-term damage. Mike, where's the best place for people to connect with you? I know you mentioned LinkedIn, crisistrack.com. Yeah. Where's the best place for people to find you?
Those two places. LinkedIn, I think I'm Mike Swenson 1. Apparently Mike Swenson was taken, so I put Mike Swenson 1 on LinkedIn. But yeah, if you just search Mike Swenson, you'll come up. Again, there's a ton of crisis content there. And when this podcast is published, it'll be up there as well. And then crisistrack.com, track, TRAK.com. That's where organizations can purchase these 9 videos for just under $1,000. That's the investment you'd be making for peace of mind and sleeping well at night. At least this won't be one thing you worry about. I can't guarantee you're going to sleep at night for other reasons, but knowing that we know what we're going to do as soon as a crisis hits definitely makes everyone sleep better.
Yeah, for sure. I think that everyone that's listening today, if today's episode made you think, and I'm betting that it did, share this episode with another business owner that could benefit from this conversation. And don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss future episodes. Mike, thank you so much for joining me on Rocky Mountain Marketing today.
Katie, I appreciate the opportunity very much. Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Rocky Mountain Marketing. I hope you're leaving with valuable insights and the inspiration to lead your market. If you've enjoyed our time together and found today's podcast episode useful, I have a small favor to ask of you. Please hit that subscribe button to stay updated with the latest episodes. And if you know someone who could benefit from these episodes, maybe a fellow business leader or an aspiring entrepreneur, go ahead and share this episode with them. Let's spread the knowledge and grow together. Also, I'd love to hear from you and continue the conversation beyond the podcast. Visit me at katiebrinkley.com to connect, to find more resources, or just to share your journey. And be sure to pick up your copy of my new book, The Social Shift, at katiebrinkley.com/book. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Katie Brinkley, and I can't wait to dive into more strategies and stories with you on the next episode of Rocky Mountain Marketing. Let's keep on taking your marketing to new heights.